Hey everybody, welcome to Trading the Close. My name is Gareth Soloway, Chief Market Strategist here at Verified Investing. We had an interesting day today in the markets. For the most part, generally quiet, all eyes on that jobs data report tomorrow. I'm going to go over the expectations of those numbers in just a few minutes. But basically what we saw today, and we can flip to the numbers here, we saw the Dow slightly higher, the NASDAQ slightly lower. The S&P basically flat. And again, as I said, volume unbelievably light. We got jobless claims this morning. They were a little higher than expected, so people filing for unemployment uptick just a little bit, but nothing to rock the apple cart, if you will. And this basically kicks the can into that jobs report tomorrow. Expectations are for 185,000 jobs to be added. Generally, I would say the market's looking for a number slightly lower than that. Somewhere in the 150 to 165 range would be that Goldilocks zone. Anything weaker than that might scare the markets a little bit. Anything stronger might make the markets worry that the Fed won't be able to cut interest rates quite as much. And don't forget, next week, guys, on Wednesday, the Federal Reserve FOMC policy statement and press conference from Jerome Powell. And as always, I'll be covering it live right here on Verified Investing. Oil today bouncing. We're actually seeing a beautiful retrace on the chart. I'm going to go over a shortable level that I'll be watching. Gold up a little bit today along with silver, and Bitcoin is trading slightly lower at around 70,500. So we are seeing a little bit of a pullback on Bitcoin, and we will cover that chart as well. All right, over to the big board. Let's take a look at the S&P 500 here. And what we see on the S&P on an intraday 10-minute basis is just how lackluster today's price action was, right? So you started, this is where we closed yesterday, this is where we opened, slow fade, a little bit of chop, and we're basically right around the flat line on the S&P. Minor little sell-off on this last couple minutes of the day, but nothing really at this point that gets me alerted to anything. Now, we did see Nvidia. Nvidia is probably the story of the day. It opened today at a higher market cap than both Apple and Microsoft, but almost immediately it sold off, going negative. At this point, it is bouncing a little bit into the end of the day, but still we are seeing it down on the day. Now, I do have this channel that I've been watching. And again, what we do here with channels aren't the end-all be-all, but it does give you a range that the chart has been inside of, right? So you have the low end here on Nvidia, right to here and right to here, and then you have your high end here, and it implies that this should be resistance up here. I also think it's interesting to note how going into big news events, for instance, the stock split tomorrow at the end of the day, you'll probably see that reflected in accounts on Monday, and then you also have the $3 trillion handle surpassing Apple yesterday, Microsoft briefly today. These are types of things that get mass exposure in the media and tend to put in potential tops. So you combine that with this. Is it a top? No one knows, let's be honest. This stock is unbelievably strong, but it is something to pay attention to here at this current, kind of just choppy here, to be honest. But if we look at the daily, you can see, and we zoom out on the daily, it's actually not a horrendous pattern, right? It's low end of the chart, and I even see, almost, it's a little bit of a stretch, but almost a little bit of an inverse head and shoulders here going into those earnings numbers, right? You could almost make a case that this to this could be an inverse head and shoulder. But again, on earnings, it's usually a wild card sort of situation. And by the way, for those of you that don't know, inverse head and shoulders in technical analysis are bullish patterns overall once they break the neckline. This hasn't broken the neckline yet either. All right, we'll take a look at the intraday on that here in just a second and see if anything comes out. We have about 15 seconds till the market closes. Flipping over to the NASDAQ 100, looks like the NASDAQ 100 is down about 35 cents on the QQQ for the day. So we'd essentially consider that to be a flat day. Notice again this longer term trend line though, and that's something that I am watching. It goes back to the COVID lows. So if we look at this chart and we take the COVID low and we connect it through this high, we actually get this high and exactly where the markets are trading now. So you also have this coordination with Nvidia, which, let's be fair, at this point Nvidia is the controlling factor, especially for the NASDAQ 100. All right, markets have just closed. Looks like, again, a slight flattish to maybe slight negative day on the overall markets. Apple today did see a little bit of a decline here, down about $1.40. On a technical analysis basis, you've basically been chopping for a long period of time. You were down for a while, then back up. And if we look at this, right, what do we see? Well, we see a lot of this sideways kind of choppy action where you have almost this range that you've been trading in, almost a parallel. And so the question is do we break to the downside? Well, if we do that, we have to come all the way down here first, or do we just consolidate and then break to the upside? And I also wonder about the kind of pricing that we've seen in Apple shares versus Nvidia. Many times I've noticed then that when Apple is down, Nvidia is up, and vice versa. There seems to be this give and take in the market. That didn't happen today, but it does happen on many days. So just something to keep an eye on in regards to Apple. All right, let's quickly go to Docusign, just see if we're getting any move. No move after hours yet on Docusign of significance. So let's flip over to Bitcoin and talk some Bitcoin action. Bitcoin on a technical analysis basis, we had this downsloping channel, which again, remember, downsloping channels are generally bullish. All right, it's consolidating after this big move to the upside. It's digesting, broke above this area right here, consolidating, makes a move up. Right here is a little resistance right there, and it's getting a little bit of a minor rejection. That's nothing to worry about yet. Little pullbacks like that are standard in charts across the board in any asset class. It's just the nature of just having a little bit of resistance. It pulls back just a little bit. Now, if we were to see a bigger move down that got back below this orange line here, that would be more problematic. But otherwise, this is just your run-of-the-mill kind of consolidation, price action with a bullish bias to it. Next up, looking at oil, guys. Good bounce on oil here. Now, for me, I called for the breakdown. We got the breakdown. Now we're getting the retrace, which is very standard in technical analysis. Generally, we see these retraces. You get the breakdown, and you go back to the scene of the crime, and then the next leg starts to the downside. So that's really what I'm watching. If I'm going to trade this, if I'm going to look at a trading opportunity, I'm looking at a potential swing trade short if we get back to about $77 to $78 a barrel. Currently, price is around $75.50, so we have to see if it can continue to rally into that level. Silver, just touching on silver. Silver, nice little update today. You can see that in general, we're getting this sideways channel forming, which is almost identical to what Bitcoin put in, right? We just talked about the Bitcoin chart and the channel there. The difference is the Bitcoin chart has moved above the channel. This is still relatively early on in the consolidation. I would expect something like this and then eventually that move to the upside. I have this upsloping trend line, which actually is my buy level. Should silver come down into that level, then I would look to trade that on the long side. So really that summarizes it. I do want to check in on Docusign. Looks like Docusign's up a little bit. I don't know if that's earnings out yet or not, but either way, it is up a little bit here. And that may be all that it gives us, right? That may be the extent of it. We'll just keep an eye on it. But it does look like earnings are out here with just a small move to the upside. So on that note, don't forget, tomorrow at 9 a.m., guys, the game plan will cover the jobs report, the unemployment report, anything moving pre-market. We'll go over the yields. We'll go over the dollar. We'll go over everything in that pre-session to the stock market open. I'm going to make sure you guys are fully informed on the data points here. All right, on that note, I want to wish you the best of the rest of your days. Thank you so much for tuning in to Verified Investing's Trading the Close. I'll see you tomorrow.